This is the Page Publishing Book Club. Alice Stockton Rossini here. Rob Barrett's over there. And you, wherever you are. We bring you more inspiration to help you find a path to writing that first book. And, you know, what can I tell you? Some people just happen to have a treasure trove to choose from. For instance, Joe Priest. He's an educator, a scientist at Tarleton University in Texas, where he runs the Laboratory for Wellness and Motor Behavior. He teaches students how to train and connect with people left paralyzed by a stroke or fall or neurological disability and have basically been dumped by our healthcare system. Joe.
We have many that are stroke survivors, and they end up with unique disability. They end up paralyzed on one side or the other, and it limits their function quite a lot. And what they have in common is the paralysis, but they also have in common that they've been through medical care and they've been through rehabilitation, and they've all been released from the healthcare system because they ran out of money or they never had insurance to start with or whatever. That's the title of the book. After everybody else gave up on them, we take them in our unique laboratory and train them. And we train their paralyzed parts of their body along with the strong parts of the body. And we give them a path to wellness. They get better. They get healthier. Use of prescription drugs goes down. So I'm able to do this on the university campus where students first, community next, and then commuters come in order to get access to our training program. I'm sitting in the lab right now watching people work out with our kinesiology majors. They're helping all these folks get better, and we train them in a team environment. And that's what makes us unique, Alice, the team environment. We believe that we need to be a part of a team in recovery. And we respond in a team environment much better than we respond just as an individual in an office or a physical therapy room or whatever. We may have 20 people working out at one time, and we get to know them, and they get to know us. And so that's what my book is all about. After everybody else gave up, we bring them in here, and we don't ever go away. We're going to train them for as long as they need us.
And they don't have to pay for it.
Well, right now there's no fee at all because I don't want money to get in the way of their recovery.
How do you have equipment. Does the university just pick up the tab?
Yeah, the university takes money from students in the form of tuition, and that's what funds the university. And they supply us with a training room, just like a weight room for the athletes or whatever. So we have a way to make people better. And in making them better, we reduce their reliance on medical care and rehab care, and thus reduce the expenses dramatically.
So you do things that nobody else does.
That's right. Nobody does it like we do. We have an unconventional program that has results. And as I explain in my book, much of it is based upon Dr. Herbert Benson's mind-body medicine. He has, for his whole 40-year career, dedicated his practice to mind and body medicine. He's a medical doctor from Harvard University who now runs the Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine. And he believes that this environment we have here is very logical, very practical. It will work. And he too is somewhat unconventional as a medical doctor. He's a little unconventional too because of the credibility he gives to the mind and the body. So we get him results from our training like no one else gets. And we can't prove that it's because of the physiology of the workout. It may be due to the psychology of the workout.
Yeah, mind over matter. You know, there's a lot to be said for that. Thanks, Joe. Jennifer Jasper remembers her dad before he went to war and when he came home from war. He wasn't the same man. This was World War II, and it was before we understood the consequences of battle. Jennifer's memories came flooding back when she came across a diary her dad carried with him through his battles. The name of her book is Who Came Home? Jennifer.
Yes, indeed. It's about my father from World War II, because I was born before the war. Of course, our war started in 1939, and my father was in, as one would say, for the duration. Of course, I was very young, but what I did remember about him, he was, one would say, a very good father, enchanting man. He was gone 6 years, and when he came back, it was a certainly different way of living. He came home with, one would say, not visible scars. And a lot of times we had looked back and thought, what a terrible waste of lives between a family that happened, because we all began to drift apart as he became more and more belligerent. And about 2009, I came across a small diary that belonged to him, that he carried in his breast pocket when he was chasing Rommel across North Africa. And all these things flooded back to me. And, I mean, he'd have fits of rage, and one day he took our pet rabbits and smashed their brains out on the back step, and he cut my sister's high-heeled shoes off and told her only whores wear high-heeled shoes. And he used to shake a lot and smoke, and he just became somebody who, you know, we loathe, really. He actually remarried, and so did my mother. And then when he died, 2009, she came across the room and she gave me this book. And I wept at the time, and I put it away with his medals and little notes and cards that my mother had saved about Winston Churchill and things like that, and put that away. And then 2 years ago, I thought, I need to get through this stuff and pull it out. And then, as I read, the penny dropped. I know that after my father had gone through World War II, he had survived the sinking of the RMS Lancaster with a loss of 3,000 men. Swum, such a good swimmer, him and his friends swum off a ship and was rescued by the Havelock. You know, he, as my mother said, he did the bloody lot. And he came home without any scars, but that's not true. I realized then, and then I did not write this for me, I wrote it for my father, who I always still had this deep love for, because I realized then that he was suffering from shell shock, as they called it in those days, but today it's post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's what destroyed him, and basically our lives, one would say. And I called the book Who Came Home, because it was not John Taylor.
It's got to be so reassuring to finally understand what was really going on with him. Thank you, Jennifer. A beautiful tribute to your dad. Mandy Carlisle wants you to open your imagination and enter a world that may not be there, but could be. And it's full of all kinds of interesting creatures. Mandy.
The main character is a phoenix witch and a vampire. And she is a private investigator. And somebody hires her to find their sister, which leads her back to the past that she left. The drama that she didn't want to be involved in anymore.
So what was the path she left?
She is immortal, and she has so many brothers, but finally she got a sister, which she just absolutely loved. But as time changed, she wanted her sister to have something different than she did. And when she didn't get her way, she left her family and the whole other world. And she was so much the law keeper. She kept everybody hidden, everybody following the laws of their races. And she just walked away because her sister was going to have a half life. she was a woman, so she wasn't going to be respected like women are respected nowadays. She was going to be just a woman.
Just a woman.
I actually wrote it when I was 18, so about a good 10, 11 years ago.
Okay.
And I was just living with my grandma, and I just sat down on her computer and just started writing. No inspiration, no nothing, and it just flowed. 32 books now in the same series.
32.
Yep.
Why did it take you 10 years to get it published?
The whole fear of rejection. I tried about 6 years ago, and it just didn't lead anywhere. I mostly couldn't put myself out there, and then finally I was just like, let's do it.
So you just happened to find Paige.
Yep. Got on the internet, and I researched quite a few people for publishing, and they returned back to me with quite a few other people, but they actually called me and talked me through it, and it wasn't just a computer, or it wasn't just nobody. They were actually personal.
Now, are you going to do 32 books through Paige?
I would like to, but I don't want to put a book out there that nobody's going to like.
Yeah.
I like it, but I'm not everybody.
Do you have children?
I do.
How old are they? I can hear them.
She's 3.
Aw.
And, you know.
Oh, so cute. Mommy's a writer, you know.
It's more of a phone call. She learned how to call people before she could get off the bottle.
Oh, good for her. Good for her. A true woman.
Yep.
You know, why vampires? Everybody writes vampire books.
It's actually, I pulled just about every mythological creature out there and threw it in one storyline. So she's a vampire with a phoenix. Her mother's a phoenix. Her father's a vampire. So all her brothers are vampires. But then her uncle and that line are werewolves. Her grandfather is the first immortal and mated to Pandora, as in Pandora's box. I bring in the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Romans, and then a whole lot of fantasy.
So that's what sets your book apart.
Yeah. You get everything from dragons to fairies to imps to the traditional vampires and werewolves, and then a whole lot of mythological fairy tales.
No stone left unturned, as they say. All right, Mandy. Next up, a children's book your little one might like, Mandy. One that will answer the nagging question, what is the secret life of a tooth fairy? Norma Gaddy has the answer. That's actually the subtitle to her book. It's entitled The Tale of Tutu the Tooth Fairy, Norma.
Well, my grandson, who is now 7, has always been very imaginative. When he was even like 3 years old, we'd be on the phone and he would just tell me stories, just making things up as he went along. So he's always been very creative like that. And you'll ask him a question about something kind of off the beaten path, such as the tooth fairy, and he just comes up with some story. So we were talking about the fact that he had lost a tooth, and the tooth fairy had come and left him $2, and he was so excited. And I just happened to ask him, where do you think the tooth fairy gets this money to leave for little children? And he went off on some tangent. He had just off the top of his head had an explanation, and I don't remember verbatim what he said to me, but that's what inspired me to write this little book and create an answer to that question. And so I sort of took his story as a basis for it and went from there. Basically, the story is about this elderly lady that lives in a little town. Everybody loves her. She's like, well, tutu is the Hawaiian word for grandmother. And she looks like somebody's grandmother. And she'd sit on her porch and talk to people as they came by. And then suddenly one day she wasn't there. And that's what the story is about, what happened to Tutu and how did we get from being the grandmother sitting on the porch to being the tooth fairy.
And we have to read it to find out.
Exactly.
There you go. Now, you're a creative writer, right?
My career, I guess, out of college was I got into the travel business. I was in the travel agency business for years, managed an agency for a while and so forth. But I always wanted to write. I always enjoyed writing when I was in college and so forth. I just never had the time to really sit down and do anything like this because I'd be working 2 jobs, raising a family and so forth. So now that I've retired, I have the time to do that, and his conversation with me was just enough to kind of inspire me to actually sit down and do it. And so now I've actually written several others I haven't published yet, but hoping to keep working with Page Publishing for those.
Oh, good for you. So that was
Yeah.
all the inspiration you needed, was your little grandson.
Exactly, that and the time.
Yes, time. That's a big one. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. And you know what? It's time for us to take a quick break. When we come back, what's it like being transgender? Stay with us. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Being transgender, can you even imagine what it must be like in today's society to be open about being a transgender person? Jane B. Lee gives us an idea in her book entitled Identity. Jane.
Actually, it's an autobiography about my transgender life. And instead of about how to be a transgender person, it's about being one. I didn't know I was writing a book. I thought I was just writing short stories, and I was writing quite a few of them. Then at one point, one of my friends read one of my short stories called The Secret, and they asked me what the secret was, and I thought it was obvious. I got on a plane to Bangkok the next day, and I started thinking about it and putting it together into my story, and then I learned that all of the short stories that I had written all fit in nicely into the book. So I begin by telling the story about when I met my mother just before she passed away. I was visiting her, and she informed me that when I was 4 years old, that she had made a dress for my sister, and I wouldn't have any part of it until she made a dress for me. And she would let me outdoors for 4 days. And then she looked at me, and I was wearing a dress, and she goes, "Not much has changed, has it?" So,
when were you able to make the transformation?
In 1992 is when I did. And that was because in 1991 I had level 4 malignant melanoma and was told I was going to die. And the first doctor said within a month. So I took my chemo and radiation therapy and laid in front of the TV and looked out over the Biscayne Bay and decided it was time to make a change. Because if I was going to die, I was going to have to live my life the way I wanted to.
It's like you were being guided by a force.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, I was. Yep. I mean, my female force is what was guiding me.
Yeah. What was the most difficult thing you had to deal with?
Rape. And writing about it was even as difficult as it was living through it.
I'm so sorry. How do you feel now?
Well, I've got some questions with the current administration. Actually, I'm going to be in D.C. in June. There's going to be a transgender 2-day conference there.
Okay.
And we're talking to congressmen. We're going into the offices and talking to them. We're invited in. We're not pushing our way in.
Okay.
To talk about it and see where things are going.
Do you feel like our society is moving forward?
When you look back to the 60s and 70s, we are way ahead.
Yeah.
If you look back 2 or 3 years, we may not be way ahead. We may be losing some ground, but we're still there. You know, because when I was growing up, I had 2 potential role models. One was Christine Jorgensen. She was a World War II paratrooper, transsexual. She was on the cover of magazines like Look and Time, and she got married. That was the only role model I could remember.
What do you think of Bruce Jenner?
I think it's fabulous what she's doing. She's out there. She's talking about it, and she talks about it properly. She doesn't say, this is what all transgenders are like. She says, this is what my life is like. And that is perfectly the way it should be, because everybody's different, and all their circumstances are different.
What are you hoping people get from your book?
I'm hoping they get an understanding what transgender life is like. I have a lot of people, even since the book is just out, coming up to me and asking me questions about their nephews or their grandkids or things like that who are transgender, and questioning what their life's going to be like or what they can do to help them. So I'm hoping that both the people who have transgender people in their life can read my book and understand what we could be going through, what our life could be like. And then also for people who want to be transgender, so that they can take a look and see what their life could be like. This is like one person's life. I'm a speaker, so I'm hoping just to go and talk about transgender issues to colleges and universities. It seems to me be the place right now where people need to get an education.
Yep,
Because
perfect.
that's what they're there for anyway, isn't it? An education.
Well, I think we've gotten an education right here, Jane. Thank you. From point-of-sale system repairs to author, Gabriel Scudiero was so moved by a news story he saw, he was inspired to write his first book entitled Gabriel. Girls and Boys Rescue involves everyone's lives. Gabriel.
Years ago, when I was a teenager, I was watching one of these news shows. It was 60 Minutes. And something always stuck in my head that every year, 800,000 kids are missing. It just stuck in my head. And years later, I had this idea about a book, about this group of derelicts who, by chance, they find their lives turned around by one fact that one of the guys, the leader, Gabriel Wild is his name, saw this thing on TV, and something in his heart just broke. So what he did, he got his friends together, and they formed this group. But they didn't find these kids the traditional way. They played the game the way that the lowlifes played the game. They kill people, they trap people, but they succeed in finding these missing kids and bring them back to their parents. They do it the street way, I'll put it that way.
And you know about the streets because you're from Brooklyn.
Oh, yes, that I do know about, yes.
Does Gabriel stand for something?
Yes, the main character in the book, his name is Gabriel Wild, and it stands for Girls and Boys Rescues, involves everyone's lives.
That's excellent. Is this a series?
It's actually a trilogy. I think nowadays people like to read books that aren't long, like 300 pages. So I make in my books 3 separate books, about 100 pages each. So it's easy and fast reading. And there's action going on constantly.
Was this something you were working on for years?
No. Me and my wife, every time we watch movies, I guess all the plots within 5 minutes of the movie. My wife says one day, why don't you just write a book? And then I thought of it, and I said, yeah, this story always stuck with me, years. And I sat down, and I wrote the book, and it just flowed out of me. It was so strange that every word I wrote, I didn't go back and change anything. Same with these other 2 books. The second book is called VIP, which stands for Vendetta Insurance Policy. And the third book is called GBG, which stands for Gabriel Gone Wild. I'm really happy of the way the book worked out, and I'm happy that people are reviewing it good. I'm happy about that.
All right.
And the second one should be out in a year.
All right, Gabriel, looking forward to it. Finally, Gus Bryant is a poet, and after getting some well-deserved recognition, his friends convinced him to put all of his poetry in one place. The name of his book, Flying Above Visions to See. Gus.
Well, this book is an uplifting inspiration book about self. Titles like Individual, Soulmate Love Poems, like My First, My Last, My Everything. You got poems like for uplifting messages for World Trade Center, like What Moral Said to Justice. You got all types of titles of this book. That's why I titled it Flying Above Visions to See. Like my poem, Individuals in the book, Timeless Voices. It's been a contest too. It won a contest in year 2004 from the International Library of Congress. Also, it's the very first page in Timeless Voices by them. Individual also, I have teachers also told me that they recite it in schools as well too. I've had mayors and judges. Judges gave me compliments and they've gotten it framed up on their walls and stuff like that. I've had people even cry Individual. That's just one poem of this book, Flying Above Vision to See.
Do you go and read your poems in public?
I have. I can recite the poem.
That would be great.
Okay? I'm going to recite Individual for you. Individual is a very inspiring and uplifting poem about self.
Okay.
It starts off by saying, "For as the wind may blow, only my spirit knows what life has in store. For my eyes see what's in front of me, but only my heart and mind knows what will truly be. What should I say, O heart of mine? Can you feel the way? And what should I say, O mind of mine? Do you know the way? Which is what I do not know, but what I have found my spirit shows that my trust in God there where he follows." I was like that.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome.
It was beautiful. I even had stars. I got stars with that poem. I got stars with my signature on that poem that I've given to many other stars. So, too. You know, yeah. I got judges, but, you know, they got it hung up on the walls. And mainly of all, I got teachers. I had certain teachers here in New York and Savannah recite it in schools. I had one teacher told me that she recites that poem, their classroom recites it like as if it was the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I was like, whoa, that was good.
Great.
Had to be good. You know, they recite it like it's, you know. Then my love poems are beautiful too.
I bet they are.
You know, and I was always an artist that loves to draw. And in 1990, I was thinking about, you know, trying to find a job. So, you know, I got on my hands and knees and asked God to help me try to find a job. And, you know, I started writing. And put my poem in a portrait contest, and it won. You know, and from there, that's another story too. You know, they gave me 4 stars to be my agent for life, and it was supposed to be $150,000 cash and prizes. And when my mother read it, she was worried of it. She was so worried that she looked like she was catching a nervous breakdown. I told her I wasn't going. But ever since then, I never did go to the contest itself from just that poem alone, individual. So from that poem, I kept writing and writing and writing. And many other people kept asking me, when are you going to write a book? You know, so I wrote the book.
You know what, Gus? That's a question we ask every week. When are you going to write the book? If not now, when, Rob? When? I say we get started as soon as Rob and I get out of here. Thank you so much for dropping in or downloading us at 710WOR.iHeart.com. We will be back next week with another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Have a great weekend.